Hello, students. Welcome to the massive open online course on international economics. In today's module, this is module number 6. In today's module, we are essentially going to cover three things. Number 1 is production possibility curve. Number 2 is community indifference curve. And number 3 is the focal point of today's module, is the trade equilibrium. Because students, if you remember your microeconomics or macroeconomics, then this production possibility curve essentially dealt with in microeconomics. And the community indifference curve is also a part of microeconomics. But if it is already discussed in microeconomics, then what is the role of these two things in trade or international economics? That is going to be covered in our third focal point, that is trade equilibrium. So in today's lecture entire analysis, we are going to cover few things. Let me give you a very brief idea, then I will discuss one by one. The contents essentially of this lecture is divided into these parts. PPC, as I said, PPC is the production possibility curve. Often we also call it production possibility frontier. So as of now, this curve and frontier, these two things are going to be used interchangeably. And the important part is that this PPC can be drawn or can be explained under three conditions. One is constant cost condition, the second one is increasing cost condition, and the third one that I have not used in much detail in this lecture, but that is the decreasing cost. And what are the properties of this PPC, and then what is the role of this PPC in deciding the optimum combination of output, and how this PPC is related with the output, that is going to be discussed there. And then the change in PPC, change in the shape of PPC under three different cases. What are the cases? That I will explain later on. And then we'll move to the community indifference curve. Then of course the equilibrium. So equilibrium means this two equilibria would be discussed. One is pre-trade, the other is post-trade. And as you know, this pre-trade equilibrium is called autarkic equilibrium, and the post-trade equilibrium is the under-trade equilibrium in case where trade is already done. And as you know, at the very end of this module, I'll try to present brief slide containing the conclusion and takeaway messages for you. So, one by one. In the introductory part of this lecture, I think that I should give you a clear idea about what is the production possibility curve, community indifference curve, and equilibrium. Production possibility curve shows the maximum amount of one commodity that can be produced, and given the quantities of the other goods that I intend to produce. But the point is that if I want to produce something, in order to produce any commodity, I need some factors of production or factor of production. If I go for a Ricardo, there is only one factor of production, labor. If I go for another kind of production structure, it could be labor, capital, land, anything you can assume or imagine. But the point is that these resources are given in the economy. So for the given resources in the economy, how much of different combination of goods or services that I can produce? Now students, think very carefully. If I have 100 units of labor and I can produce 10 apples and 10 oranges by using 100 units of labor, then that's fine. But the point remains is that what if I want to produce more oranges? The immediate solution to the problem is that I need to cut back the production of the other commodity. What I'm doing in this course of action, I am essentially reallocating some resources from one commodity to another commodity, so that these combinations, the possible combination of apples and oranges, are essentially defined by this production possibility curve or production possibility frontier. So in a sense, we will see how production changes and resources flow during trade and consumption possibilities. So during trade and consumption possibilities means I'm producing and then I'm selling. Now, while selling, I am deciding how much I should retain for consumption and how much I should sell for others' consumption. Others means it could be another country, it could be another individual. So that's the basic idea of production possibility curve. But as I mentioned, the main problem of the economy is the resources. This is very much limited, be it labor, land, capital, or technology. So no community can produce all the goods and services it requires. It requires means I may intend to consume a bunch of goods, but that does not necessarily mean that I am capable of producing all these goods. And I'm capable of producing all these goods very efficiently. So the production intention and production efficiency both are very important. So the question is, what if I cannot produce one commodity more efficiently, but I intend to consume that good? Then I need to buy that good from someone else, and I can reallocate resources from the production of that very good to another good. So how this thing is going to happen, that I will try to explain here. So essentially, when I'm saying that I'm reducing the production of one commodity just in order to produce more of the other commodity. So that concept is nothing but the idea of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, students, you remember, it has been used widely in various courses in economics. Opportunity cost is the cost of losing one opportunity. If I am asked to join a private university or a private college, say for the time being, I'm assuming that I'm serving in a government institute and I'm getting X amount of money as my salary. Then if the authority of any private university asks me to join their institute, then what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a comparison. Comparison between what and what? Comparison between how much money I'm getting here and how much money I'm going to get there if I join the private university. The question is, how much money is I'm leaving here to sacrifice this job is the opportunity cost of joining that other job in another university. So you remember this thing and you try to always use this concept in economics, because the main idea of economics, production, trade-off, consumption, trade-off, everything is essentially based on this very idea of opportunity cost. So roughly speaking, if a community produces cheeses and wheat, then it further wants to increase wheat production, some current production of cheese must be sacrificed to release resources from cheese production to wheat industry, or from cloth production to wheat industry. In fact, I'm going to use the example of cloth and wheat later on, but not going to use the cheese production case. But here I just use the word cheese because both cheese and wheat comes under, consumption basket. Wheat is not directly consumed, but it is usable. So here the PPC shows the frontier beyond which production cannot be carried on with the available resources and technology. So what does that mean? I'll explain. Just hold on for a moment. So no society would produce at any point within the curve with full employment. So this point is very important. It's the question of employment, whether it is full or suboptimal. So let's try to very quickly draw a diagram and then focus on these concepts. So here my curve is AP. This PA curve gives me various combinations of outputs. Output means wheat and cloth that can be produced by using the entire resources of the economy. So it is possible that this country is producing 10 units of cloth at point P at max. On the other hand, this country can produce, say this A is signifying 15. So 15 units of white at max. At max means what? Entire resource is used either on wheat or on cloth. If that happens, then the maximum of 10 cloths and 15 wheats I can produce. I connect these 2 points, not all these 2 points. I connect these 2 points by a line. So when I'm connecting these 2 points by a line, this means all these points along this line are the possible production equilibrium points, the production possibilities. Now, look at the definition of production possibility curve. So what this means? That production possibility curve. So along this line PA, what I am getting? Various combinations of production which are possible. And this curve is defining that possibilities. That is why it is called production possibility curve. Now the question is that along this line, the moment I am on the line, this means entire resources of the economy is completely exhausted. Exhausted means there is full employment. So if full employment prevails along this line PA, then it is naturally implied that anything below this line PA means this is possible that any of the factors, or if I use only one factor, all the factors are not used. So some unemployment is there in the economy. Think of any point like R. R means you are producing 2 units of cloth along with 7 units of wheat. Now, imagine you are extending this line from left to right, going beyond R in such a way that eventually you reach this point. If you reach this point, the combination gives me 2 combinations. One is 2 and 10, the other is 2 and 7. So if I produce 2 and 10 at this point, this means the resources are fully employed. But look, I am producing 2, but instead of 10, I am producing 7. Means some resources are not used. This means there is unemployment. Now, consider another point, N. This N gives me what? I can produce 10 units of wheat and I can also produce 8 units of wheat. But the point is that I cannot produce 8 and 10 units of these 2 goods simultaneously, because that combination takes me to a point N which is beyond this PA line. So if I want to produce 8 units of cloth, then I can at most produce 4 units of wheat. Similarly, if I produce 10 units of wheat, then instead of 8, I need to produce only 2 units of cloth. Otherwise, if I want to go there, that is beyond my capability. Therefore, you can say that this production possibility curve or production possibility frontier is a kind of reflection of your capability to produce goods at max what you can do in the production frontier. So this is the thing that I already explained. So the idea of opportunity cost, here you can see that we are measuring the cost of producing cloth in terms of the amount of wheat foregone. I will repeat it and explain a little deeper. So in order to produce 1 more unit of cloth or vice versa, so along this line, what I am doing, if I want to move away from point P and I want to reach point A, think, how can I move from P to A? This P is giving me 10 cloth and 0 units of wheat. So now I want to produce 1 unit of wheat. If I do that, I may move at this point. So if I move at this point, what I am doing, I am sacrificing some amount of cloth. The moment I am sacrificing some amount of cloth, some factors are released from cloth industry. Otherwise, the cloth industry were using entire labor force. Now, not the entire labor force is used in cloth industry. The leftover labor force cannot remain unemployed. So they immediately go to the wheat industry and increase the production of wheat by little bit. So the amount of cloth I am sacrificing, or the amount of cloth which is foregone, this is very important. This foregone amount of cloth is the opportunity cost. Now the importance of this production possibility curve along this PA gives me what? Gives me that throughout this PA line, the rate at which this conversion from cloth to wheat or wheat to cloth is being taking place is constant. That is why this line is a straight line. So this constancy is a very important thing. I am not saying this constant means it is 1 or 2 or 3 or half. It may take any value, but the point is that the ratio is constant, and that ratio is called the slope of this production possibility curve. Now let's very quickly go through another type of production possibility curve as I promised at the very beginning. So one part was already discussed, it is constant cost case. Now we are moving to increasing cost case. This is a very popular one, and if you look at any textbook, you will find this kind of production possibility curve everywhere, because these two are the popular form of production possibility curves. Here the concept is same, and the concept is just like the opportunity cost analysis that I mentioned. But the point is that here, if I move from cloth production to wheat production, the rate of this conversion or transformation of cloth into wheat is no longer constant. The point is that if I move from point A, from left to right, if I look at this diagram from point A along this curve, if I move, then what is going to happen? Now, for the time being, let us assume that AC is equal to CC1 is equal to C1 C2 is equal to C2 C3. What does that mean? If I go down along the vertical axis from A to C3, I am sacrificing equal amount of cloth. Equal amount of cloth means, say it is 1. 1 unit of cloth is being sacrificed. So if I sacrifice this cloth, then I need to reallocate these resources in the production of wheat. So how much wheat I can produce? Look at this diagram. If I sacrifice the first unit of cloth from A to C, the diagram is a little complicated in the sense that AC does not look like equal to CC1, but students assume that AC is equal to CC1. So if I move from A to C, just by sacrificing 1 unit of cloth, how much of wheat is being produced? It's OW amount of wheat is being produced. Now if I move further from C to C1 along the vertical axis, I am sacrificing another unit of cloth. And then for the second unit of sacrificing cloth, I am producing WW1 unit of wheat. And for the third unit of sacrifice, if I move from C1 to C2, I am getting W1, W2 extra unit of wheat. And for the last one, C2, C3, I am getting only W2, W3 amount of wheat. So what does that mean? The more you go from left to right along the curve, the amount of wheat that you can generate by sacrificing same identical amount of cloth for each unit of extra wheat, this ratio is gradually going down. Means the extra wheat production that I am getting by sacrificing 1 unit of cloth is declining. This means production of wheat becoming more and more costly. And the implication is that the cost of producing wheat is gradually increasing. That is why it is called increasing cost industry or increasing cost case. So this PPC under increasing cost is going to be a bowed out shape. Not like in the convex one. This is a concave production possibility curve, which is very popular in the textbook. And the idea remains same here throughout this slide as well. So as we move downward from left to right, it is the cost of producing wheat will gradually increase, and it will always slope negative from left to right. And again, this is based on the opportunity cost analysis. Now, what are the basic properties of this curve? This bowed out here, TT prime is my PPC. This TT prime is my PPC. So as I said, just like full employment and overemployment condition, nobody is going to produce at point C, J, I, F, S, H, because all these points are coming with some amount of unemployment. Whereas point like D, E, these 2 points are, giving me a combination of output, cloth and wheat, which is beyond my capacity. So beyond this full employment level means the labor or capital or factors of production required to reach D, I am not endowed with. So maybe I need to borrow some labor and capital from some other country, but these options are not there. So I cannot go beyond this TT prime curve. So TT prime curve is showing me the maximum amount of wheat that can be produced for each amount of clothing, subject to the constant, and constant is the resources or the factors. So this slope is the opportunity cost, what I said. As I said, this curve is negatively sloping from left to right. Now the point is that once my production possibility curve or frontier is drawn, then what should be the equilibrium? Equilibrium means equality. In an economic sense, equality means equality between demand and supply. If we look at this PPC and the production possibility curve or frontier or the structure, the mechanism, the idea that I get is production of goods and services. Production means its supply. So your PPC is the reflection of my supply side, whereas the issue that I am going to discuss in a moment, that is community indifference curve, is a reflection of my demand. So the demand supply will get equalized. But before that, I need to find out the production equilibrium point. This production equilibrium point is taking place at a particular tangency condition where my price ratio of what? Price ratio of wheat and cloth is equal to the marginal rate of transformation. Transformation means transformation of cloth and wheat. So I am transforming wheat to cloth or cloth into wheat. So these two ratios should be equal. So marginal rate of transformation is popularly known by MRT. That should be equal to the price ratio at point F. So if this is the case, then the equilibrium will take place at point F, giving me OC1 amount of cloth and OW1 amount of wheat. Now what if the price ratio is not like PP, rather the price ratio is P2P2? Price ratio P2P2 means price of wheat is more compared to PP. So if that happens, what should I do? I should produce more wheat. So I should move from point F to point S. If the reverse is true, the price ratio is like P1, the price of cloth is more. So the production equilibrium should be at point A. So whether the production equilibrium is at point A, F or S, that depends on two things. One is the slope of the PPC and the slope of the price line or the price ratio. So these tangency conditions are giving me the production equilibrium. So these are various explanations to these points that I just mentioned, that how this production equilibrium will be attained. So once this production equilibrium is attained, I can have the supply curve, and then from the supply curve, I need to extrapolate this supply curve to get the equilibrium, and these PPCs may take different shapes depending on what kind of technological progress I may have. Just for a hint, the first one is neutral technological progress, and the second one is labor saving technological progress, and the third one is capital saving technological progress. If it is there, both the factors of production are there in the system. Students, now you remember very quickly the definition of indifference curve. Indifference curve gives me various combination of goods and services. In our example, goods are wheat and cloth. So essentially, this is the various combination of wheat and cloth that gives me equal amount of satisfaction. And if it is for community, various combination of wheat and cloth that gives the entire community, that gives the entire nation, that gives the entire country equal amount of satisfaction. For example, it may be 20 cars with 50 houses, gives me 100 satisfaction. And it also is possible that 50 cars and some other amount of houses is giving me same amount of satisfaction. If that happens, if I connect these two combinations, I will get the indifference curve. And for community, I'll get the community indifference curve. And as you know, higher community indifference curve gives me higher level of utility or higher level of satisfaction. Here in this diagram, I have drawn 3 indifference curves, and all these are community indifference curve. Community means, students, it is for the country as a whole, not for an individual. So C11, C12 and C13. Higher indifference curve gives me higher level of utility. Standard properties of indifference curve. And PQR, look at C11. This PQR giving me various combinations like BA, B1A1, B2A2. But the interesting part is that all these combinations are giving me same satisfaction. I'm similar happy with all these points, all these PQR. So I'm connecting these points, getting community indifference curve. And higher indifference curve means C13 giving me maximum amount of satisfaction among these three. C30 gives me more satisfaction compared to C11 and C12. This is the basic idea and you all know, I'm pretty sure about it. Now, the question is, what would be the equilibrium? As I said, one equilibrium means the production equilibrium, but that's not the end of the story. This is a half-baked cake. Equilibrium means production should be equal to consumption. Supply should be equal to demand. Supply is drawn from the PPF or PPC and demand is drawn from the CIC. Now we need to interact. Interact to get these two things equated at some point. Where is the point? In this diagram, the point is at point E. So at point E, just try to look at point E from two perspectives. One is PPC perspective, other is CIC perspective. This PPC perspective giving me what? Slope of this AB curve is the marginal rate of transformation, students remember. This is equal to the slope of this PS line. PS is the price ratio. So when these two things are equal at point E, my production equilibrium is satisfied. Now, I'm looking at same point E from a slightly different perspective. My community indifference curve is C12 and slope of this community indifference curve at E is MRS, marginal rate of subjective substitution, that I have not explained here because I know that you are well acquainted with this concept from the very beginning of microeconomics course. So I didn't want to repeat it. So here the slope of this C12 at point E defined by MRS is again equal to the slope of this price line PS at point E. So slope of this PS or price ratio is equal to two things. One is MRT from PPC, the other is MRS from C12. So now we are done. Since producers are giving me at equilibrium at point E, so they are happy. Consumers are also substituting between wheat and cloth at point E following C12, so they are also happy. So if producer and consumers are happy, I am at equilibrium. So the economy is at equilibrium. So at equilibrium, this means there is no trade. Still the equilibrium is taking place at point E, giving me the autarkic equilibrium. At autarkic equilibrium, ON amount of wheat is produced and OM amount of cloth is produced. Now, what is going to happen if I go for trade? So go for trade means this E is valid for production equilibrium, but the price ratio is different. A different price ratio means the steeper one. I look at my cursor. The steeper price line is giving me equilibrium at point A. So my production equilibrium is moving from E to A, and when I am producing at point E, I can reach Y2. Means initially my equilibrium was on Y0. Now I am moving to Y2. Definitely Y2 is greater than Y0, and just by moving from E to A and then exchanging this production basket, production of wheat and cloth by some amount with another country, I am reaching this B point, and this ADB is giving me the trade triangle. So this diagram is explained with more detail in this slide, so you can understand this is self-explanatory. And then, so the question becomes that how equilibrium under autarky is determined. What are the conclusions of today's module and takeaways? The production possibility curve gives me the maximum amount of various goods that I can produce. The community indifference curve, I am happy with these combinations. And then equating MRT and MRS, I get pre-trade equilibrium. And then equating the international price ratio, I get the trade equilibrium, and have an idea that if I produce more of a commodity, I can sell, I can export. If I produce less of a commodity, I can import. And eventually, I can get the idea of balanced trade. Maybe balanced trade will be explained in more detail in another module. But for the time being, everything is equal means I am happy. My counterpart, another country, is also happy. So if that happens, then there would be gains from trade. And that is the prime motive of any kind of exchange in this analysis of international economics. So thank you very much, students.